Millionaire Chris Decker received a call from his ex-wife Jamie. He said he still hasn't signed the divorce papers because he can't believe their family fell apart. Jamie responded that they both need to move on. For Chris's business was more important than the family, but there was no going back now. The daughter misses the father very much and asks her mother why she doesn't love him anymore. Jamie said she still loves him, but sometimes circumstances arise in adult life that can't be helped. Chris is feeling upset. That evening he stopped at a supermarket to buy groceries. Suddenly a young beautiful girl asked him to help her choose wine. It turned out that the girl's name was Sky. Chris was immediately attracted to her and offered to drive her home. Sky lives in a motel. She told had a fight with her neighbor the night before, who often gets out of control. Chris suggested that the girl go to him, but she politely declined. However, when Sky heard her neighbor shouting behind the door, she couldn't hold back her tears.
Offer still stands.
This time, Sky agreed. Chris had no idea that a man was watching them from the window. Seeing Chris's luxurious mansion, Sky was thrilled. They raised their glasses to their unexpected meeting. Chris told her that he developed a security app in college, which brought him a huge fortune. Sky in turn told him that she used to be a model. However, she never enjoyed it. Now she works as a waitress in a local bar, trying to figure out what she wants from life. Chris showed his impressive wine collection to the new acquaintance. They planned to drink together. Sky told Chris that he saved her today. There was an immediate attraction between them, which turned into passion. The next morning, while Chris was sleeping, Sky returned to the motel. Upon seeing her, Ronald began to say it was shameful. Lisa, who was upset and didn't know where Sky had gone without warning, didn't sleep all night. But Sky had no intention of explaining anything. The girl locked herself in the room. Lisa in tears begged her to open the door and talk to her, but Sky wasn't in the mood for a conversation. At home, Chris remembered the days when their family was happy. Now he is alone and desperately trying to fill the emptiness inside himself. Soon Chris went to the bar where Sky works as a waitress. The guy confessed that he was getting a divorce from his wife and didn't know how to go on living. When Sky finished work, the young people went for a walk. The girl also decided to confess something. The thing is, she has no family. Since the age of 6, she has been raised in different foster families. Her childhood was a nightmare. Chris felt very sorry for Sky. His childhood was not the best either, as the parents were never around. In the parking lot, Chris saw some thug trying to break into his car. Chris tried to chase him away, but the guy attacked first and broke his leg. After some time, Chris was discharged from the hospital, but still moves around in a wheelchair. Sky is always by his side, providing support. Chris is very happy with her company and asked the girl to take care of him instead of a nurse. Sky agreed happily and said she would go to the motel to get her things and return. Meanwhile, Lisa, who was on edge, was waiting for Sky. The motel owner Ronald says this situation is unhealthy. Sky came and started making her sarcastic jokes again. Ronald just reminded them that they were 2 weeks behind on rent. In the house, Lisa once again gave Sky a jealous scene. Lisa asked the beloved not to leave her, as she couldn't live without her. When Chris woke up, he saw Sky next to him. The girl seems perfect to him in character and appearance. Sky surrounded him with care and love, making him forget about everything. Since then, they have been spending all their time together. Chris lost his head and did not answer the ex-wife's call. Later, Sky helped Chris to lie down in bed and gave him painkillers. The guy confessed his love to the girl, feeling on top of the world with happiness. Sky reciprocated. They were not at all embarrassed that their relationship was developing so rapidly. The next day, Ronald came to the girls to remind them about the rent. No one responded to him. Upon seeing Lisa's body, who had voluntarily left this life in the bathtub, Ronald was horrified. Sky woke up Chris. Meanwhile, Ronald was giving a statement to the police officer. The man treated Lisa well, who had lived in his motel for 8 years. In his opinion, her depression could have been caused by her breakup with Sky. The officer believes that Sky is not who she claims to be, as there is no such name or surname in any database. Journalists arrived, who were interested in the details of the incident. The officer refused to comment. Jamie called Chris again to remind him to sign the divorce papers. She said she would come back later. Chris lied that he hired a nurse. Jamie found this strange since it was not typical of her ex-husband to let strangers into the house. While Sky was taking a shower, Chris decided to search through her belongings and found a photo of her with Lisa. He accidentally dropped things on the floor, which drew Sky's attention. She wasn't angry at all, saying that she would have done the same thing in his place, as people are not always who they claim to be. Once Sky entered the children's room, she took a toy, lay down on the bed and started singing a creepy lullaby. Upon waking up, Chris couldn't find his phone anywhere. Sky was also not around. It turned out that none of the other gadgets in the house worked either. Emergency news was shown on the TV. Chris was in shock when he found out what had happened to Lisa, Sky's neighbor. At that moment, the girl returned home. Chris began to suspect that she was not who she was trying to appear, but pretended that everything was okay. Chris asked her to help him find his phone, and Sky suspected that he knew something, especially since the guy looked very nervous. Chris decided to tell her straight out that Lisa had passed away, as was just reported in the news. Sky continued to eat calmly, not at all upset by what she had just heard. Chris realized with horror that his beloved was involved in what had happened to Lisa. Sky confirmed his suspicions, saying that she had indeed done it. The girl also confessed that she had been watching Chris for the last 2 months, so she knew for sure that his cleaner and gardener would not be here for the next 6 days. Sky knows absolutely everything about him. Chris understood that their meeting was not accidental. In fact, the girl had deliberately arranged everything. Chris tried to chase her out of the house, then Sky used a remote control to close all the windows and doors. After that, she knocked Chris out with an electric shocker. Meanwhile, Ronald was getting ready to clean. In Sky's room, he found a spyglass and found it suspicious. The view overlooks the luxurious mansions in the elite area. Chris found himself a hostage in his own home. Sky tied him up, saying that he had what she needed. When Chris insulted her, she kicked him, overturning his wheelchair. Chris realized that she wanted to steal his personal data. Sky advised him not to resist and threatened him with a drill, demanding that he give her all the passwords and codes. Chris insulted her, but regretted it in the next second. Sky started torturing him. Meanwhile, Ronald continued to spy on the neighbors and at some point saw Sky in Chris's house. This made him suspicious. Having obtained all the necessary passwords and data, Sky stole money from Chris's personal account. The guy was in a very bad state. Sky reminded him that it was better for him to cooperate, otherwise it would end badly for him. When Chris asked the girl for her real name, she took scissors in her hands, indicating that she was not joking. To get more money, Sky needed Chris to call his bankers and confirm the bank transfers. Sky did not suspect that Ronald had been watching them the whole time. Taking advantage of the moment, Chris attacked Sky and grabbed her, but the girl quickly broke free and showed him a video of his wife and daughter. Sky had been watching them for the past 2 months too, and told Chris that if he tried to attack her again, his family would suffer. After that, Sky damaged the generator and took photos of all the valuable things in the house. Soon the guy who had earlier attacked him in the parking lot arrived in a truck. It turned out that Sky was in collusion with him. Kiju intends to sell the collection of paintings and wine, as well as expensive carpets. Meanwhile, Ronald decided to personally organize surveillance of Sky and came to Chris's house. Seeing Ronald on the camera monitor, Chris started trying to call for help. When Ronald broke the glass, Sky received a notification on the phone. She turned the car around to return. However, Ronald did not rush to release Chris or call the police. The millionaire in panic promised him a large sum of money in exchange for his rescue. Since there was no cash in Chris's house, Ronald became interested in expensive works of art. He took down a Picasso painting from the wall, which according to Chris is worth $7 million. Only after that did Ronald slowly start to release Chris from the duct tape. Suddenly Sky returned. It turned out that Ronald did not bring his phone with him, so he could not call the police. The men were trapped by Sky. Ronald took a knife and assured the girl that he would not tell anyone anything if she let him go. Sky, however, was in the mood to play. She took an antique sword in her hands and began to chase Ronald around the house. Meanwhile, Chris managed to free herself from the tape, stand up from the wheelchair, and go outside. However, his car was locked, and the alarm went off. Sky attacked Ronald and quickly disarmed him, after which she took his life. Sitting on the snowmobile, Chris heard Ronald's screams. The guy rushed away from here at the highest speed. But he almost immediately crashed into something, and falling off the snowmobile out onto the road. A man passing by saw him right away. Injured Chris begged the man to take him away from here as soon as possible. The man put him in his luxury car. Chris panicked and asked him to call the police urgently. The man gave him his phone. Chris was horrified to hear Sky's voice on the phone. But he was even more horrified when the man brought him back to his house. Sky was already waiting for them. It turned out that all these people were conspiring. In addition, Sky and Sebastian are in a romantic relationship. While Sky went to clean herself up, the man told that he was her stepfather. When Sky was 14, he married her mother. But soon the woman supposedly passed away accidentally. Since then, Sebastian has been raising Sky on his own, teaching her the fine art of deception and stealing personal data. Chris found it disgusting. The man was furious about this, saying he hated the wealthy who could afford anything. According to Sebastian, there is nothing shameful about stealing from the rich. Chris realized that these people were moral freaks who could not achieve anything themselves and decided to take it away from others. At night, Chris listened as Sky and Sebastian indulged in passion in his room. Later, Sky came to him, saying she would be sorry to leave this wonderful place. When she lived here, it was like being in a parallel universe. Chris said that Sky could have it all, a home, a family and money. He loved her and was ready to give her everything she wanted. But alas, Sky chose the path of lies and pretense. Now the girl intends to take the last thing he has left, $14 million in the main bank of the country's cell. Sky has already found the key to the cell in Chris's safe. However, it is impossible to enter the vault without biometric data. That is why Sky left Chris alive. They need his fingerprint. Chris stated that he has no intention of cooperating. But the criminals did not need it. They grabbed the guy and took his finger. In the morning, Jamie arrived with her daughter Willow. They found that everything was gone from the house. Seeing a red spot on the floor, Jamie panicked and called her daughter. However, Sky found her first. She went out to Jamie with Willow in her arms, introducing herself as Chris's nurse. Sky still released the girl. Suspecting something was wrong, Jamie demanded to call Chris. However, instead of him, Sebastian entered the room. Jamie and Willow were locked in the room with wounded Chris. Meanwhile, Sky and her stepfather headed to the bank to carry out their wicked plan. The family was thinking about how to get out of here. Seeing the ventilation, Chris told his daughter to climb in there. Jamie was strongly against it, but Chris convinced her that it was the only way out. If they don't escape before the criminals return, it's all over for them. Sky and Sebastian arrived at the bank, pretending to be Mr. and Mrs. Decker. Chris explained to his daughter how to get out of here. It was dangerous, but there was no other choice. A bank employee asked Sebastian to undergo fingerprint identification. The man's hand was in a cast, so no one noticed that it was not his finger. However, the system could not recognize the thermal signal. At that time, Willow was crawling through the ventilation. The next attempt at identification was unsuccessful. Sky and Sebastian started to get nervous, but it finally all went well. Chris told his wife what had happened. Jamie confessed to him that there was no money in the safe deposit box. Recently, on the advice of her lawyer, she had taken it in case they couldn't agree during the divorce. Sky and Sebastian definitely didn't expect to see a note from Jamie in the safe deposit box. Chris couldn't believe that the wife thought he was capable of deceiving her, but it didn't matter now. Sky and Sebastian rushed back at full speed. They already knew that the girl was free. Since there was nowhere to run, Willow hid in the house to let her parents out. Now the criminals needed Jamie, not Chris, because all the bonds were in her safe deposit box. Sebastian was attacked by Chris, and a fight broke out between them. Sky had a gun. The stepfather was shouting at her to shoot, but suddenly the girl aimed the gun at him and fired a shot. Taking advantage of the moment, Chris wounded her. Sky searched for him throughout the house when suddenly music started playing. The remote control was in Chris's hands. Suddenly the music went out, and so did the lights. Sky was forced to shoot blindly. Chris said over the loudspeaker that he had the key. If Sky wanted to get it, she had to come to him. Chris opened doors for Sky with the remote control while his wife and daughter hid. Sky realized that Chris was playing with her, intentionally leading her down the wrong path and scaring. Suddenly he attacked her from behind, and a fight broke out between them. Sky got the upper hand, but Jamie then attacked her. Sky was stronger than both of them. Willow saved the parents by finding the gun and shooting. Jamie rushed to the daughter and hugged her. The police arrived. Sky's last words were her real name. It turned out her name was Margaret. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.